Bindi is doing so much better now. So things like a lot of travel are a bit challenging for her at the moment. And so she'll be here next year to celebrate this wonderful night.
There is a photograph that circulates every year on September 4th, Steve Irwin's death anniversary, across wildlife conservation pages and fan accounts alike. In it, a young woman stands in the middle of the Australia Zoo Crocoseum, head bowed, one hand pressed flat against her chest. She is not performing. She is not waving for the cameras. She is simply standing in the place where her father's memorial was held in 2006, letting herself feel everything that comes with being his daughter. That woman is Bindi Irwin. And the reason her absence from a glittering Las Vegas gala in May of 2026 broke the internet. The reason her mother could not finish a sentence on a red carpet without her voice faltering, is the same reason that photograph resurfaces every single year without anyone asking it to. Bindi Irwin carries something the rest of the world can only partly see. And her family, in their own way, has been quietly carrying it with her. The third annual Steve Irwin Gala was the kind of event that its namesake probably would have found slightly overwhelming. A grand Bellagio ballroom dressed in khaki and conservation messaging, ambassador animals weaving through a crowd of Hollywood donors and Dancing with the Stars alumni. It was a long way from the Queensland scrub where Steve Irwin spent his mornings. But the gala has become something meaningful for the family he left behind. It is one of the few occasions each year where Terri, Robert, and Bindi step into the same public light together, representing the wildlife warriors mission that Steve built from the ground up. For 2 consecutive years now, however, that representation has been incomplete. Bindi's chair was empty at the family table. Again. Those who have followed the Irwin family closely said the absence registered in the room before a single course had been served. Robert and Terri arrived together on the carpet, radiant, proud, clearly tired from the flight out of Brisbane, but with a visible space between them where a third person was supposed to be standing. Terri addressed it the way she addresses most difficult things, with honesty wrapped in warmth. Speaking to entertainment reporters, she said that travel had become genuinely challenging for Bindi at this point in her recovery. She was not absent because she did not want to be there. She was absent because her body, which has been waged in a medical war for well over a decade, needed her to stay home. And then Terri said the thing that made everyone stop and think a little harder. She said it was actually less demanding for Bindi to spend her day feeding crocodiles at the zoo than to make the journey to Las Vegas. Pause on that sentence for a moment. We are not talking about skipping a brunch reservation. The Crocoseum seats 5,500 people. The crocodiles that perform there are saltwater giants, among the most dangerous reptiles on the planet. Bindi Irwin, at this moment in her life, finds it easier to manage that environment than to board a transatlantic flight and walk a casino carpet. If that does not tell you something about the severity of what she has been living through, very little else will. Robert added his own layer to the explanation, noting that someone always has to be the one to hold the fort back home. With nearly 500 staff and hundreds of thousands of acres of conservation land to oversee, Australia Zoo does not pause simply because the family is abroad. He described his sister as doing a tremendous job in that role. His voice carried pride. But reporters standing close enough said his eyes told a more complicated story. To understand where the Irwin family is right now, you have to go back to March of 2023, when Bindi posted a photograph from a hospital bed on Instagram. She was 24 years old, and she was writing, publicly and for the first time, about more than a decade of unexplained pain. Tests that led nowhere. Doctors who dismissed her. Scans that showed nothing definitive. Years of performing energy and wellness for the cameras while privately managing symptoms that left her barely functional on some days. The diagnosis, when it finally came, was endometriosis, a chronic condition in which tissue similar to the uterine lining grows outside the uterus, attaching to surrounding organs, causing inflammation, scarring, and pain that can be frankly debilitating. The condition affects roughly 1 in 10 women of reproductive age globally. It remains, despite its prevalence, dramatically underdiagnosed. The average patient waits 7 to 10 years from symptom onset to confirmed diagnosis. Bindi waited more than 10. Her first surgery, performed in New York by specialist Dr. Tamer Setkin, removed 37 endometriosis lesions and addressed a cyst that had caused her ovary to adhere to the side of her body. The response from women around the world was enormous. For many, Bindi's openness was the first time they had seen someone in the public eye describe exactly what they had been experiencing without being told it was normal. But endometriosis does not resolve with a single surgery. It is persistent. It is clever in the way chronic illness tends to be clever, receding just enough to let you believe you have turned a corner, then returning harder than before. In the spring of 2025, it returned with particular force. On the very night the second annual Steve Irwin Gala was being held in Las Vegas, the night Bindi was supposed to be standing on that same Bellagio carpet, she instead found herself being told by a surgeon that her appendix needed to come out immediately. There was no choice, no delay, no attending the gala first and dealing with it later. She flew directly to New York for emergency surgery. Less than an hour after the procedure ended, she filmed a video from her hospital bed. Anyone who has watched that video will not forget it easily. She is pale, still clearly in post-operative pain, but calm in the way that people are calm when they have spent years being in pain and have simply learned to exist alongside it. She explained that alongside the appendix removal, 14 additional endometriosis lesions had been found and excised, and that a hernia from her daughter Grace's birth had been repaired in the same procedure. When the medical math from both surgeries was totaled, it was staggering. 51 endometriosis lesions removed across 2 operations. An appendix, a postpartum hernia, a cyst, a decade of damage, addressed piece by piece. By August of 2025, Bindi shared an update that her followers described as genuinely moving. She wrote that she had reached a point where she could function in daily life again without the constant threat of nausea or collapse from pain. She said, in her own words, that she was beginning to recognize herself again. After 13 years, those 6 words hit with the force of everything that had preceded them. That is the recovery Terri Irwin was carefully protecting when she chose her words on the Las Vegas carpet in May of 2026. Travel is not just inconvenient for Bindi right now. It is a genuine risk to the progress she has fought so hard to reach. While Bindi's battle has largely played out in medical suites and Instagram captions, Robert's journey through the grief and legacy of his father took a different form entirely, one that ended in a mirable and 35 million combined tears. Robert Irwin joined the 34th season of Dancing with the Stars in the autumn of 2025. He was 21 years old, fresh-faced, naturally charismatic in the way that makes audiences feel like they are watching someone who was always supposed to be on a stage. What nobody anticipated was the depth of emotion that the experience would unlock, not just for Robert, but for everyone watching. Week 5 of the season was dedication night. Each celebrity was asked to dedicate their performance to someone meaningful in their life. Robert chose Terri. He sat in the pre-show interview chair and attempted to explain why. He was visibly struggling before the first sentence was even finished. He spoke about growing up without his father, about understanding slowly, as he moved from childhood through adolescence and into adulthood, just how extraordinary his mother's strength had been. Steve Irwin died in September of 2006. Robert was 2 years old. He has no memory of his father that has not been mediated through footage, photographs, or the stories told by people who knew him. Every milestone Robert has experienced, learning to walk confidently with animals, developing his own voice as a conservationist, stepping onto that television stage, his mother has been the one standing in the gap. He danced a contemporary routine to a song from the Tarzan soundtrack, the one Phil Collins wrote about the longing to belong somewhere fully and completely. At the climax of the routine, Terri walked onto the floor in a yellow dress. Robert lifted her. He twirled her. And then he simply collapsed into her arms, the weight of every year since 2006 pressing down through his shoulders, and the judges wept openly. Bruno Tonioli, not a man known for understatement, told Robert that his father was looking down from somewhere and smiling. The score was 35 out of 40. In rehearsal footage aired later, Terri broke down in front of the production cameras. She talked about the long difficulty of learning to smile again after losing Steve. She said that in her own mind, the narrative was reversed. She had always believed she had drawn strength from her children, not given it to them. Robert telling her that she had lifted him up was something she was simply not prepared to receive. Weeks later, the show aired its 20th anniversary episode. Robert and his professional partner Whitney Carson were assigned to recreate a routine from the show's history, specifically, Bindi's own freestyle from her season 21 victory in 2015. The dance Bindi had performed to the Leona Lewis song Footprints in the Sand. The dance Bindi had dedicated to her late father. The weight of that assignment was almost architectural in its heaviness. When the performance ended, Bindi herself walked onto the floor to join her brother and Whitney. As the three of them held hands, projected images of Steve Irwin holding a baby Robert appeared on the floor beneath their feet. Robert dropped to his knees in the middle of the ballroom. The judges gave the routine a perfect 40 out of 40, the first perfect score of the season. Prince William had recorded a video message of support that aired the same night. Bruno called it poetic. Derek Hough, choking visibly, called Robert this generation's beacon of joy. Tom Bergeron, who had hosted the show during Bindi's original victorious season, told Robert he had grown into a genuine star. In his confessional afterward, Robert said he had not known the footage of his father would appear during the performance. He said that every time he stepped onto that floor, he carried his father's message with him. By the time the season finale arrived in late November of 2025, Robert was operating on determination alone. Whitney later revealed that he had developed a serious rib injury during the rehearsal period, every breath painful, every lift a negotiation between ambition and his body's capacity. She made the decision to remove a particularly demanding lift from their freestyle routine, prioritizing his health over the score. The finale unfolded in 3 rounds. They performed a quick-step to an Australian rock track, earned a perfect 30 out of 30 on a CHA, and closed with a freestyle that blended 2 songs, one warm and nostalgic, one soaring and anthemic. When the host read his name as the winner, Robert's first act was to grab the microphone and credit his sister. Bindi had told him, he said, that the show would change his life forever. She was right. The numbers confirmed what audiences already felt. The finale drew over 9 million viewers. Voting reached 72 million ballots, more than double the previous season's total. Robert became the youngest male winner in the show's history. And together, he and Bindi became the first pair of siblings in the program's entire run to both hold Mirrorball trophies. Terri, Bindi, Bindi's husband Chandler Powell, and 4-year-old Grace Warrior were in the audience when the announcement came. The Instagram post Terri wrote that night has since been shared hundreds of thousands of times. She thanked Robert for his heart and his passion, welcomed Whitney formally into the Irwin family, and reminded the world that even a zookeeper could learn to dance.